Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome back to CASE Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing, incredibly supportive CASE family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. Our love and respect goes out to those that knew and loved Sarah and all those affected by this dark case. Sarah Papenheim was born January 30th, 1997 in Minnesota. She was the second child of her parents, mother Doni Odegaard and father Jerry Papenheim. She had an older brother named Josh, and the two only got closer as they grew older. When Sarah was in second grade, her family moved from Minneapolis to Redding, California. Here she discovered a love for music, in particular drums. After graduating from Foothill High School in 2015, she became an accomplished drummer. She could often be found playing in weekly jam sessions at Redding's music venues. It was hard not to notice Sarah, not only because she was a great drummer, but she was also one of the few females on stage. At the age of 18, Sarah returned to her native Minnesota with her mum and brother. She went on to play drums at various venues in Minnesota, and by the age of 19, Sarah had become a kind of local celebrity amongst blues fans. With an amazing wide smile, Sarah was nicknamed Ronald McDonald. However, while Sarah thrived, her brother Josh was struggling. Their parents had divorced and he was battling with depression and mental health problems. In February of 2016, sadly this all got too much for him, and Josh snuffed out his own light. He was just 20 years old. Sarah was understandably devastated, but rather than let the pain consume her, she decided to study psychology to help people with mental health problems in the future. She was determined that in some ways her brother's memory would live on. Sarah had a close friend, Nico Carson Major, who lived in the Netherlands. Now ready for a fresh start, Sarah decided to enroll at Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and there she began to study psychology. Nico helped Sarah through the loss of her brother, helped her with her studies, and generally as a native speaker helped her in any way that he could. It was a new country, she didn't speak the language, and she was going through a hard time. So Sarah leaned on Nico a lot. In fact, they leaned on each other. As Sarah immersed herself in studies and work, her love of music returned. She wrote to Bernard Allison, a famous blues singer with whom she had once performed on the same stage as, telling him that she had almost saved up the money to buy the drum kit that she had dreamed of for so long. When he toured Europe in 2017 with his band, Sarah and Nico went to the show. As soon as Bernard spotted her, he immediately called her to the stage, and after wishing her a happy birthday, he invited Sarah to sit at the drum kit and take part in a performance, just like in the good old days. Things were different, there was no denying that, but Sarah was finally starting to feel like herself again. As 2018 came to a close, she was ready to go home and spend some time in the United States. She booked a flight for the week before New Year's Eve, excited to see her mum and dad and return to the family home. She was definitely ready. However, Sarah never made it home. She never got the chance to get on that flight. Sarah lived on the third floor of an apartment complex in Rotterdam. The complex was filled with students and had a certain buzz about it. There was always something going on. Sarah had rented an apartment there for around a year, sharing with another student, a fellow musician who played the double bass. He was named Joel Schelling. Joel was talented and loved music, therefore music was their common ground, but it was probably their only common ground. Sarah was very outgoing, happy and an optimistic person, but Joel was not. His only friend was Sarah, and he often lost his temper with her. They often quarrelled, but Sarah didn't want to leave him alone with his problems. Although we don't know, some have theorised that Joel was a reminder of her own lost brother, and perhaps she wanted to make sure there was someone there to save him. She told her mother that she could always calm Joel down when he got mad at someone, saying he would never hurt her as she knew how to talk him down. However, as time passed, the situation began to deteriorate. In December of 2018, Sarah wrote to her friend Adam in Wisconsin. She told Adam that she was now afraid of her roommate, Joel. Joel had told her he was going to physically eliminate 3 people who he didn't like. Sarah wrote, "I have to go to the police." A few days later, Sarah had spoken to her mum on the phone. She'd raised the same concerns. Her roommate's behaviour was now bothering her more and more. Mother Donnie told her daughter to look for another place to live immediately, and until she moved out, she was to try and stay as far away from Joel as possible. And yes, from the outside, Joel did sound unhinged, but was he serious or was he just being melodramatic? On the 12th of December 2018, a Wednesday, everything changed. At 12:20 p.m, Sarah and Joel's next-door neighbour called the police. They reported hearing them fighting loudly and then a female screaming in horror. When the police arrived and entered the apartment, they found Sarah lying unconscious on the floor. She had multiple marks made by a sharp implement all over her body. Attempts by emergency services to resuscitate her were sadly unsuccessful. It was too late. Sarah was already gone. Joel, her roommate, was not there. Interviewing neighbours on the same floor, officers learned that Joel had left the apartment in a hurry, and he had taken his double bass with him. Yes, that's right, this tortured soul musician fled the scene with his giant double bass. Unable to hide it in his backpack, Joel was rather conspicuous as he tried to flee. Less than 2 hours after the crime was committed, 23-year-old Joel was arrested at Eindhoven train station about 60 miles from Rotterdam. His parents lived in Eindhoven and he was on his way to visit them. He called his mother whilst on the train and confessed to her that he had taken Sarah's life. The autopsy revealed 27 wounds made by a sharp implement on Sarah's body. Several of these were in the neck, abdomen and back. This was a frenzied and sustained attack on his roommate, on his one and only friend, a friend who had only ever tried to help him. Sarah had not gone to the police to report that her roommate wanted to attack 3 people, but she had contacted social workers who help people with psychological difficulties. This was very telling of Sarah's kind nature. She may have seen Joel as a threat, but it seems she didn't want to get him into trouble, but she did want to get him help. These social workers did pay Joel a visit, but they got the impression that he was totally normal. He answered all of their questions and was calm and straightforward. There was nothing untoward about his demeanour or his behaviour. He was fine, or so they told Sarah. However, on the following day, Sarah was again forced to contact social services. This time, in a fit of anger, Joel had begun to beat himself with a hammer and said that he would soon have to do away with several people. Sarah was now afraid that Joel would find out that she was the one who had sent the social workers to talk to him, but she still knew that she needed to get him help. However, the social workers did not have time to respond to Sarah's second request. This is because Joel had already ended her life. Joel did confess to the crime, but, you guessed it, he said he couldn't remember any of it. He offered no answers as to why, how, or when. According to him, they began to argue, although he wasn't sure why. And then when he came to, he was already in the shower cleaning himself. His story obviously brought no comfort to Sarah's family, but at least they knew that Joel was now in custody. Joel Schelling went on trial in March of 2019. Sarah's mother flew to each hearing. There, she could only understand what the participants were saying with the help of an interpreter. At the trial, Joel argued insanity. He stated that he suffered from schizophrenia, from delirium, and that he heard voices in his head. When the judge asked him if the voices had ordered him to fight with Sarah, he replied that he did not know and could not remember. He also repeated that he didn't know what they had begun to fight about. Various experts said that Joel suffered from various disorders and needed long-term treatment. At the same time, they concluded that he should still be held partly responsible for taking Sarah's life. The medics reasoned that Joel remembered the beginning of the fight and a scuffle with Sarah, and therefore he could have made a choice to stop or to go and grab the knife. However, he chose the latter and should be punished for it. The prosecution demanded 10 years in prison for the defendant, but the judge disagreed. Joel was sentenced to 6 years in prison, followed by indefinite imprisonment in a psychiatric hospital. The court went on to explain that it rejected the prosecution's argument for 10 years in prison because of the suspect's relatively young age and his extreme diminished capacity when he took the victim's life. Joel, therefore, could not be fully blamed. Upon sentencing, the court also released a statement. It explained that considering the severity and unpredictability of the crime, along with the serious psychological disorders of the suspect, they believed that a reoccurrence of a violent crime was highly likely. They said that these issues can't be fixed in prison. The court also ordered Joel to pay €68,700 in compensation to Sarah's family. Sarah's mother was understandably furious at the sentence, saying, "This is not justice." She was expecting a minimum of 10 years. Instead, after just 4 years, Joel could be released from prison on parole, although he will then be under close psychiatric care. In America, Joel would have faced life imprisonment or maybe even capital punishment, so that he would never have had the opportunity to do something like this again. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? What do you think could be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Please do let me know down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.